Okay, listen, at some point, the calorie deficit has to end. It's not meant to be a forever thing. It's just a temporary condition we're putting our body into to achieve fat loss. And then eventually we're gonna get the results that we wanted, and we're gonna need to end that fat loss adaptation. We're gonna need to bring our calories back up, or we're gonna be at the point in the journey where we really need to keep our fat loss in shorter phases so that we're spending some time at a deficit, but most of the time at maintenance, to keep our bodies healthy and to keep those deficits more and more effective. And the process of bringing ourselves out of a calorie deficit or increasing our calories is called reverse dieting. If decreasing your calories is dieting, then increasing your calories is reverse dieting. And that often sounds really scary because we get so concerned with gaining the weight back. Like, if I increase my calories, am I gonna gain the weight back? And the answer is no, you're not, as long as you do it systematically and incrementally, and you don't blow away past your maintenance. And in this video, I'm gonna explain exactly how I did that over the last 8 weeks. If you came here from my last video, I did a really successful 12-week cut over the summer. And then after that cut ended and I achieved my results, now I need to increase my calories, and that's what we're gonna go over in this video. If you haven't seen that video about all the details of the calorie deficit, maybe go watch that first and then come back here. I'm also gonna show how the process played out in some client data, and that way you'll be able to see it in another context. Because this process is absolutely repeatable for everyone because it's science. So just to recap the fat loss phase, I did a 12-week cut starting in July all the way through October 12th is where it ended. And my highest weight at the start of that cut was 140.1. My lowest weight at the end of that cut was 131.2. So I lost just about 9 pounds, 8.5, 9 pounds if we're gonna take daily fluctuations. And in the 8 weeks since then, you can see here that I have maintained that loss, and I'm averaging right around 132 still, even though I'm eating between 300 and 400 calories more per day than I was during my cut. Now, that being said, my entire deficit, I was able to keep around 1,800 calories. My body responded really well to that target, and I was continuing to see results, so I didn't have to make any drops. So I ended my cut eating about 1,800 calories on average. Now, immediately after I finished my cut, I went out for a celebratory meal with my husband, and my weight did spike up after that meal, and because the next week I made my first increase for my calories, and anytime that we are increasing our food, specifically eating more carbs, the scale is gonna fluctuate a little bit because our body and our tissues are holding on to more water as a result. That's not a bad thing. It'll always come back off, but we have to see it through. We have to see the process through and trust it and not freak out at the first blip up on the scale, drop our calories back down, and then never get ourselves out of the deficit. So I saw that initial spike, but I've done this a lot and I trust the process, so I push forward with increasing my calories. So my goal in increasing my calories eventually was to get it from 1,800 up to about 2,200. So I wanted to make incremental steps in between there. So the first calorie increase that I made was to increase my target range to get my average to be right around 1,900. So I set my target range 1,850 to 1,950, and I held it there for actually 3 weeks. I planned on only doing 2 weeks, but that third week I got sick. So in the first 2 weeks, I did a really good job increasing my calories. You'll see that my protein stayed nice and high, and my average weight actually came back down in week 2 because my body had gotten used to that increase. So I was averaging 131.8, which is right around where I was when my deficit ended. Then in week 3, I got sick. So that 1931 average that you see is probably only 2 or 3 days worth of data. But my weight actually dropped because I was sick. So I knew that that drop in weight was not gonna stick around once I recovered and got back to normal eating. So in week 4, I decided to make my next increase in calories. So I went from aiming for my average to be around 1,900 calories to get it up to about 2,000 calories because that was the next step that was logical for me. I do, and with clients I do this as well, I don't make any changes for 2 weeks at a time because we really need to see how the body responds to that increase and then where it settles back down. So when we make these incremental jumps, we're gonna hold it there for at least 2 weeks, maybe even up to 4 weeks before we make another jump. 2 weeks usually is pretty appropriate, and then we can see how the body responds, and then we're ready to make another increase. So I would have made this increase in week 3, except for I was sick in week 3. So I made the increase in week 4, and you'll see my average got up to 2030. So I was averaging right around that 2,000 mark. And again, my average weight stayed the same because I am increasing these up, but not blowing past my maintenance. So my average weight staying the same. In week 5, we went on vacation. That week was a free-for-all. I ate everything and drank everything and came back actually weighing less than I did before I left, which was crazy. So then in week 6, my goal is just to get right back to my same targets that I had set the week before vacation, almost like vacation week didn't happen. So week 4 and week 6 were now my 2 weeks at that target range of about 2,000 calories. And in week 6, I averaged 2050, 2053, and my weight stayed down at 131. So 6 weeks into this reverse diet, my average weight was actually down almost 2 pounds from where it was when I started my reverse diet, thanks to that initial blip that I saw on the scale and pushing through that discomfort of seeing the scale go up because you know it's gonna come back down. And when you think about it, as I'm making these incremental increases, I am still at a deficit, still at a deficit, still at a deficit. So for those 6 weeks that my deficit was really, really shallow, it's still a deficit. And so I was seeing a little bit of a drop on the scale, definitely maintaining at least the fat loss that I saw at my deepest deficit. So then in weeks 7 and 8, those are the past 2 weeks, I made yet another increase and got my average above 2100 because I estimate that my maintenance is somewhere between 2100 and 2200, and that's where I want to be eating now. My goals from here on to the future, I need to be eating at maintenance. And so for the past 2 weeks, I have been doing that. Between 21 and 2200 really feels like a good maintenance for me. It matches my hunger, it matches my energy levels, and my weight is still maintaining. You'll see that my average in week 7 was 131.9. Then the week that I got my period, so this last week, week 8, my weight blipped up a little bit to 132.2, but that's my period fluctuation. And honestly, maintenance is a range, right? It's not going to be exactly the same weight every single week. So I am maintaining my weight loss because my fluctuation range is now between like 131 and even 133. I'm fluctuating there. But when I started my deficit, my fluctuation range was like 138 to 140. So that fluctuation range is maintaining low even though I'm now eating my maintenance calories. And so that is a really, really successful reverse diet. I'm back up to maintenance calories at this point. I am maintaining my weight, and the plan, at least through the holidays until January, I'm going to reassess in January what I want to do. But my plan is to maintain eating at maintenance calories every day, keep my protein nice and high, train really hard, and continue to maintain the fat loss that I achieved in that 12-week cut that I did over the summer. Come January, I may decide to increase my calories a little bit, go into like the tiniest little surplus because I really want to grow some muscle and just like feel strong and go through that. And that's like the next step for my goals if I choose to do that. So that was my reverse diet details. I want to show the example of my client Madison, who I worked with for, I'll pull up her weight chart here. I worked with her for almost a year from May of 2023 into May of 2024. And she is an example of someone who had more of a larger weight loss journey to go through, but we did a really successful period of maintenance in the middle. And then we're able to continue with her fat loss after that at even higher calories because we had taken that time to do the maintenance phase in the middle, which makes the deficit even more successful. So looking at her weight chart, we started her in May of 2023, and she weighed like 186. 186 is the highest weight that I have on record of her data. When I first put her in her deficit, I estimated that her maintenance calories were between 2050 and 2130, and that's important to remember because that's going to come into play when we bring her back up to maintenance. For the first 16 weeks of her deficit, so that first period of loss that you see, she was aiming, her calorie target was 1700 to 1800 for that entire 16 weeks. And her body responded really well to it, and she felt really energized and fueled, and she lost about 15 pounds in 16 weeks, which is like excellent, excellent rate of loss. And then we got into like winter of 2023, this was November, and we reassessed her goals because originally when she came to me, she said she wanted to lose 15 pounds. And I was like, okay, girl, you did that. Now what? And she was like, I don't know. We're getting into the holidays. I'm feeling just like a little tired and like worn out with a deficit. And all of the things that were going on in her life added up to, this is a really great time to bring her to maintenance, train heavier, get stronger, and give her body a little break from the deficit, and then drop her back into a deficit when she's ready in the spring. So from October of 2023, we started the calorie deficit increase. Her first step, she had previously been averaging about 1750, so right in the middle of her target range. And the first step that we made increasing her calories was to get her more like 1825 to 1900. That was the step to get her average calories up about 75 to 100 calories per week. We held it there for 2 weeks. Her body responded really well, maintaining. So we made another increase 2 weeks later to 1850 to 1950. Weight is still maintaining. 2 weeks later, we made the increase 1900 to 1975 because I wanted her average to get up into the mid 1900s. And then in January of 2024, we made her final increase of getting her about 1975 to 2075, which that target range is just set to say like, get as close to 2100 without going over, was kind of the goal. And she did that. She held there, averaging right around 2050 for 8 weeks. She sat there in that, averaging right around 2050 for 8 weeks. And remember, I estimated her maintenance at the beginning of this whole thing to be about 2050 to 2150. So we were sitting right at her maintenance for 8 weeks, which really gives the body a really nice chance to just kind of recoup. She was training hard, she was building muscle, her metabolic rate kind of re-regulates up to that level. And then in March of 2024, she was ready to drop back into a deficit, just kind of looking at like what was coming up in the spring and summer for her and like where her life was going. She wanted to lose a little bit more body fat. So we were able to drop her into a deficit eating about 1800 to 1900 calories, which, remember, her starting deficit at the beginning was 1700 to 1800. So we were able to drop her into a deficit that was 100 calories higher than her original deficit, and she started to see loss again immediately. So when you see that second slope down on the chart, that is at averaging about 1850 calories, and she was there for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 weeks. 11 weeks, and she was seeing great results. And the only reason we made one more drop is because we knew that was going to be our last month working together, and she wanted to just test a lower deficit. So we dropped her into the 1700 to 1800 calorie range for the last 4 weeks working together, and she ended, this is wild, when she ended, her weight was 160.5. So she lost about 26.5 pounds over the course of 6 months with that really nice maintenance phase in the middle, never having to take her calories lower than 1700. I mean, that is great success. And because we had gone through the reverse dieting process once together, when we ended our time working together, she was able to then direct herself through another reverse diet, get her calories back up to maintenance, and then since then has just been maintaining right around this 160 mark really successfully, because she knew how to do the reverse diet, get herself to maintenance, and then stay there, which is like the whole point. So that's how reverse dieting works. I hope that made a lot of sense. The fear with people is always that you're going to gain the weight back. And as long as you are smart and systematic about it, the way that you should be about your deficit as well, you will not. And the beauty of doing these incremental increases every 2 weeks or so is that you can monitor how your body responds, and you can see if your weight starts trending up. Trending up is not the same thing as fluctuating, right? Like I said, every time you make an increase of calories, your body's going to respond with a blip up on the scale because it's going to hold on to water, and that's okay. Your body will adjust, it'll come back down, and then it should just level out. So we're looking at trend lines more so than we're looking at daily fluctuations. And if you're doing this really slowly and systematically, and for like you need to give yourself at least 4 weeks. If after 4 weeks you notice a slight trend up, then you have just slightly surpassed your maintenance, and all you have to do is bring it back down to your maintenance and then ride that out to infinity and beyond in like perpetual maintenance bliss. Because nothing feels better than eating at maintenance. You're not in a deficit and you don't have to deal with hunger management. You're not in a surplus and you don't have to deal with eating past the point of fullness. Like nothing feels better than maintenance, where you know that you're just like fueling well for your body's demands. It matches your energy, it matches your hunger, and everything just kind of like clicks into place, and it just feels really easy and natural. I hope that was easy to follow. If you have any questions about maintenance or how to get to maintenance after watching this video, go ahead and leave it in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer. And go forth and conquer. Eat more. Make sure that you're following or subscribing. I guess we say subscribe here. I do plan to do a lot more content here, especially if other content platforms get shut down. I'm gonna spend a lot more time and energy here. So also leave in the comments what kind of content you want to see from me. I've done vlogs, I've done more informational videos. I can do some training videos. Yeah, so leave that in the comments. Give me some ideas. I am here to help you. Okay, bye. Catch you later.